The city of Constantinople lay suspended between two worlds, a monument of marble and stone perched at the juncture of continents, where the waters of the Golden Horn and the Bosporus entwined in a slow, eternal dance. Dawn light struck the gilded domes and minarets, gilding them in muted gold, and the streets below already thrummed with motion. Merchants laid out spices, figs, and olives in uneven rows along the cobbled roads, the scent of roasted chestnuts mingling with the salt of the harbor air. Carriage wheels creaked, hooves clattered, and the distant shouts of dock workers organizing goods to be unloaded from ships gave the city a sense of perpetual urgency. Yet, beneath this ordinary rhythm, a subtle tension pervaded every corner, from the echoing corridors of the Hagia Sophia to the narrow alleys where children chased one another with wooden swords, unaware of the historical weight pressing upon their home. For generations, Constantinople had been a fortress and a capital, a beacon of trade, faith, and administration, its walls and towers having endured earthquakes, rebellions, and sieges. Now, as the year of 1453 unfolded, an inexorable pressure threatened the very identity of the city, a slow tightening of circumstances that made inevitability tangible even if unspoken. Emperor Constantine XI, Palaiologos, walked along the northern ramparts, the cold wind tugging at the folds of his cloak, carrying the scent of brine and smoke from the forge yards. He was a man formed as much by history as by his own temperament, a blend of disciplined calculation and a latent melancholy born from witnessing the empire's slow erosion over decades. Below him, soldiers polished cannon and repaired parapets, their movements meticulous, almost ritualistic, as if repetition itself could stave off the approach of fate. The emperor's eyes scanned the horizon, noting the distant hills where Ottoman banners had been sighted, and in that glance was the convergence of every choice made by his predecessors. Treaties signed and broken, alliances neglected, fortifications repaired in partial measures, armies stretched thin by centuries of attrition. He did not need words to understand that the city's walls would soon be tested, that every stone, every gate, every sailor or archer was poised at the threshold between survival and ruin. And yet, even in the quiet anxiety of anticipation, the city maintained a rhythm that had persisted for centuries. The bells tolled, the markets opened, prayers echoed, and life insisted on continuing, impervious to the designs of empires. Across the Bosporus, the Ottoman encampments sprawled along the hillsides and plains, organized with methodical precision that belied the chaos of moving tens of thousands of men, horses, and siege engines. Mehmed II, the 21-year-old Sultan, moved among engineers and commanders with a measured intensity, his hands tracing maps, his eyes calculating trajectories for cannons he had studied months before. His ambition was not merely conquest, but the consolidation of a vision that had been cultivated over his youth, an empire that could span continents, controlling trade, culture, and faith through a combination of force and strategy. He had studied Constantinople's walls and gates, calculated the resilience of its defenses, and marshaled an artillery corps capable of unprecedented destruction. Yet, even as he planned, he accounted for the human variables, the fatigue of his men, the temperament of commanders, the likelihood of disease and disorder, acknowledging that strategy alone could not dictate the unfolding of events. In this interplay of preparation and uncertainty, the fate of one of the world's greatest cities was being methodically, almost inexorably, approached. Within the city, the citizens moved with a mixture of resignation, hope, and practical urgency. Artisans stocked arrow quivers and reinforced gates with timber. Women carried water and tended to the sick. Children ran messages between towers, their small bodies weaving between men with helmets and axes. In the palace, advisors debated the allocation of men and resources, their voices low but urgent, tempered by years of tradition and the knowledge that every choice carried consequence. The emperor listened more than he spoke, weighing counsel against the reality of his forces, the morale of his people, and the certainty that time favored those who could endure longer than their adversaries. Every individual, from the highest official to the laborer hauling stone along the ramparts, became a node in a network of cause and effect, each action subtly influencing the probability of survival or destruction. The city's walls themselves were monuments to centuries of adaptation and ingenuity, layers of stone added over decades, towers reinforced at critical junctures, moats deepened and widened, gates armored against battering. Yet these defenses were not infallible. The very age that granted them strength also introduced vulnerabilities. The cannons of Mehmed's engineers could batter masonry in ways unheard of decades earlier. Every stone in the fortifications carried the weight of history and the inevitability of human innovation, standing simultaneously as a testament to endurance and as a reminder that the forces of change could never be fully contained. Soldiers paced these walls, their armor clinking, eyes scanning the distant horizon, hands resting on bows, crossbows, or swords. The tension in their shoulders mirrored that of the emperor, a collective recognition that the future of the empire might hinge on a combination of skill, endurance, and circumstance, all interwoven into the texture of daily labor. Markets continued to operate under the shadow of these looming threats. Merchants counted coin, exchanged news from distant ports, and whispered rumors of Ottoman movements. In workshops, blacksmiths and carpenters labored on weapons and fortifications, their sweat and effort grounding abstract strategy in tangible labor. Even as cannon fire was months away, the city existed in a suspended state where every glance, every motion, every decision carried a subtle gravity. The interplay of ordinary life and extraordinary anticipation created a psychological landscape as complex as the physical one. Fear mingled with resolve, curiosity with dread, hope with the recognition of historical momentum pressing upon every inhabitant. Religious observance threaded through this fabric of tension. In Hagia Sophia and smaller chapels, priests chanted, offering prayers not only for divine protection, but as a rhythm for the city's collective psyche, a reassurance that human effort was intertwined with cosmic order. Constantine himself partook in these rituals privately, understanding that leadership demanded both strategic calculation and recognition of the symbolic weight of faith for a population facing potential annihilation. The interplay of spiritual and temporal authority created layers of expectation and obligation, reinforcing the sense that the events about to unfold were part of a continuum rather than isolated incidents. Outside the walls, the Bosporus carried the movements of both commerce and military preparation. Ships creaked under the strain of cargo, and sailors tested rigging and sails as the wind shifted. The water itself seemed to reflect the tension. Tides and currents became instruments in the calculus of both defense and assault. Engineers along the city's shore inspected chains stretched across the harbor entrance, while scouts reported on enemy positions. Every element, the wind, the water, the stones, the soldiers, the merchants, participated in the subtle choreography of impending confrontation. History, in this moment, was less a series of discrete events than a complex, interconnected system in which human choice, environment, and technology were bound together by consequence. As morning gave way to midday, the city's rhythm became a quiet drumbeat of preparation and anticipation. Constantine walked again along the ramparts, observing soldiers adjusting their positions, archers testing bowstrings, and civilians ferrying supplies. He understood that the ultimate defense would be a combination of human endurance, strategic insight, and the capacity to adapt to circumstances beyond control. In his measured observation, he reflected not only on the immediate threat, but on the broader sweep of empire, how centuries of expansion, consolidation, negotiation, and war had culminated in this precarious equilibrium. The tension of inevitability was pervasive yet silent, carried not in proclamations but in the movement of bodies, the hum of preparation, and the pervasive awareness that the city's fate was now suspended between choice and circumstance. By late afternoon, the light fell golden across the city, gilding domes and towers, casting long shadows in narrow alleys. The emperor's gaze rested on the horizon once more, where distant flags marked the approach of Mehmed's forces. The weight of anticipation was tangible, an unspoken contract binding all who inhabited the city, the knowledge that the coming days would test endurance, judgment, and the capacity to act decisively under pressure. Yet, amidst this weight, life continued. Merchants finished their transactions, soldiers repaired walls, children played, and the ordinary rhythm of existence persisted, even as history pressed inexorably forward. In this delicate balance of the mundane and the monumental, the city of Constantinople embodied both resilience and vulnerability, a living organism poised at the cusp of transformation, its fate suspended in the interplay of environment, human endeavor, and the relentless passage of time.